Hello, and welcome to our weekly Friday Live Extra, produced in conjunction with Friday Live, which broadcasts over the air and comes to you as a podcast each week. Don't forget to check out even more about Nebraska Arts and Humanities on our website, nebraskapublicmedia.org/Friday Live. I'm Genevieve Randall. This week on our Friday Live Extra, we spoke with Conrad Tao of the Junction Trio about what classical music is and how to bridge the gap between old and new. But first, we are talking snow. Beginning this Friday, February 13th, the Nebraska Snow Sculpting Championships will begin in Omaha's Heartwood Park. Competition hours will be from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Friday and Saturday, with judging beginning on Sunday, February 15th at 10 a.m. This will ultimately determine which team of up to 3 snow sculptors will move on to compete at the 2027 U.S. National Snow Sculpting Competition, which is held in Wisconsin. There's also a People's Choice Award, so you could participate in that. And today I am joined by Nebraska's competition director, Matt Seeley, and a snow sculptor, Jason Peralt. Welcome to both of you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so Matt, also you yourself are a snow sculptor. So question for both of you, what goes into a good snow sculpture?
Well, we have criteria that we actually give to the judges. Part of that is, the impact the piece makes. I mean, this is truly judged like fine art, the message of the piece. And then there's components of technical expertise. Obviously, negative space with snow is definitely something that we like to see. There's a saying, go thin to win. So if you can do very thin things that reach up into the sky with the snow, it definitely gives you a higher score, if you will, with the judges.
I'd love to know how each of you got into this. Jason, let's start with you.
Well, it started out with a snow igloo in my front yard with my wife, and my wife happens to be the niece of Matt. So he called me up one day and asked me if I wanted to compete with his team. And so that's just kind of where it started.
How about for you, Matt?
Actually, I started in my front yard too. I actually made igloos, snowmen, and sculptures that got more and more elaborate. Before long, we had neighbors complaining because the traffic that came through our neighborhood started to get pretty thick and heavy. Before long, a social media post apparently made it to the national director, and he asked me to compete at the national championship. And at that time, we didn't have any state competition. So for a number of years, I went to the national competition without really earning the right to go, I guess you could say. I've set up things at Crescent Ski Hill with the previous owner that used to own it, trying to get different groups of people to come and compete, and it just never quite panned out. Until 2019, we got an event going in Elkhorn that was very successful pre-pandemic. It was a wonderful event. We had 12 snow blocks there that got sculpted. And the next year, as you know, we went into COVID. Then the site we had it on in Elkhorn got turned into a condo. So it's taken me a number of years to finally get back to a sponsor that would sponsor this event. I talked to Heartwood Preserve, and they expressed interest, and they definitely came through with the funding to put on this event.
So the weather this weekend, it's looking, a little warm, especially for snow. How does that work with something like snow sculpting?
Well, we're actually using a design for snowmaking that is from an Academy Award-winning special effects artist / engineer. The gentleman's name is Dieter Sturm. He's oddly enough from Lake Geneva. But we're actually using his equipment that he designed. So we're going to start tomorrow morning, and we will make snow with a method that can make snow in any weather. Dieter is known as the special effects person that can make snow in any situation imaginable. And if you look him up, he's made snow for lots of different movies. I don't have a list in front of me, but it's some of the top rated movies that involve snow. I know Fargo is one of them. He's the guy who did it. So we're using his technology to bring this to the state. In 2019, I had my own snowmaking equipment, and it was a lot more work. It was a lot harder to create the snow for that event. So we're kind of stacking the deck a little bit to make the snow. We're going to have some warm temperatures to actually sculpt the snow, but that's part of the competition. Like I said, in I think it was 2014, when I won second at national level, my piece collapsed 15 minutes after judging, but I won second place at a national level. It's part of the sport. Most snow sculptors understand that the weather's going to do what the weather does, and we have to just roll with it. And you can still make beautiful sculpture even if the weather's warm. You just have to approach it a little differently.
I was thinking about, as you talked about your snow sculpture collapsing, right after it had been judged, Matt, I like to make cakes. Not that this is an art, and there is no competition I'm entering, but my husband always asks me, like, why do you put this much work into it when we're just going to eat it? I'm like, I don't know. It's enjoyable, right? So I was thinking about that with your snow sculpture collapsing.
So some of these snow sculptures that I work with or compete against and work with in some instances around the world, they're professional artists. And I'll tell you what, snow sculpture, it kind of just brings you to a different point in your life as far as understanding the impermanence of things. I heard one artist at one time, and I don't know who to credit this with, but I've heard it repeated numerous times. And what they said was, the statue of David over in the Louvre someday will be no more than cosmic dust as it was before. It's just a matter of time. And it's, in that time, there's a perspective. And you tie in with that perspective, your own personal experiences and what you do in your life. Snow sculpture teaches you to be a lot more in the moment and in the experience of what you're creating, as baking a cake and then eating it. We have pictures we post on social media now. So people honestly are kind of spoiled. When I first started in this sport, that wasn't so prevalent. Yeah, impermanence is going to be there whether we want it to be or not. Whether it's 60 degrees out or it's minus 12, they're all going to melt eventually. And you just got to kind of let go of that. And you just, make something extraordinary out of something ordinary and enjoy it for the moment.
So, Jason, I'm going to turn back to you. I'd love to know, after that first sculpture you made in your front yard, what were the kinds of tools that you collected? Can you describe? It's all by hand, as I understand. So what are some of the tools that you use to create your snow sculptures?
Well, the first igloo I think that we made, it was a recycling bin and a snow shovel. After that, I guess it got pretty heavy into it right away when Matt invited me to participate with his team at the national competition. So it went from 0 to 60 and, pretty quickly. So I guess Matt had a full arsenal of tools, from, little raft type tools, chisels, like mending plates on a handle, that you would use for framing. It just all kinds of weird things that tend to make the best tools. So,
well, you've mentioned, Matt, that this particular event is a pretty big deal. Here's the quote. You said this isn't just a local contest. It's a sanctioned competition that brings the community together to put Nebraska snow art on the map. So from the perspective of a tenured snow sculptor, what makes this competition different?
Obviously, having it in my hometown, definitely makes it different. Partnering with someone like Heartwood Preserve to do this. They do events all year long, different types of events. The location itself is just really probably a step above what I've seen at other state competitions in other states. And we're hoping with the new technology we're using to make snow, we're hoping we can make this a little better than what some of the other state snow sculpture events. The wild card being the weather, but they're dealing with the same thing. In fact, I believe it's Illinois. I know for sure Wisconsin is having their state competition this weekend as well. They're going to be dealing with the same problems with temperature that we are. And those people in those states, they have a lot of seasoned veterans that show up for their state snow sculpture events. So the big thing about this event is it's in Omaha, and I think it's a fun new thing for people to come out and see at Heartwood Park in West Omaha. For people trying to find the event, it's where the old farm used to be for Boys Town. It's located at 301 South 145th Street. It's just a little south of 144th and Dodge.
All right, a pretty cool event, and no pun intended on cool with snow.
True, true.
The Nebraska Snow Sculpting Championships. They're happening throughout this weekend, February 13th through the 15th, and that is, as Matt just said, Omaha's Heartwood Park. Competition hours are from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Friday and Saturday, with judging beginning on Sunday, February 15th at 10 a.m. There will also be voting for the People's Choice Award on Sunday as well. So you can participate in that. Matt and Jason, it has been a pleasure talking with you. Stay warm and good luck this weekend.
Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you.
And as always, you can find more information at our website. That's nebraskapublicmedia.org. Just look for the page for Friday Live. More of our Friday Live Extra in a moment. This podcast and all the things Nebraska Public Media brings you are here thanks to support from listeners who become members. To learn more, head to nebraskapublicmedia.org. Next, the Junction Trio. They work to connect the past and present, juxtaposing familiar chamber works with new music. The ensemble features violinist Stefan Jacques, cellist Jay Campbell, and today's guest, pianist and composer Conrad Tao. The trio is performing at the Johnny Carson Theater as part of the Lincoln Friends of Chamber Music series. That's coming up Thursday, February 19th at 7:30 p.m. Conrad, welcome. Thanks so much for joining me.
Hi, happy to be here.
What does the name Junction Trio come from?
It's very, very simple. It first came together just from our last names. So you have Jacques, Campbell, and Tao, JCT, which, highways the world over. And, we all know this as the Junction. But also it felt apt because this is a group for all of us. It's kind of a luxurious little trip away from what we do individually. We all are quite busy doing different things as individuals and in collaboration with other people. Stefan is very busy as a solo musician. Jay plays both as a solo musician and as part of the Jack Quartet. And I do a lot of work on my own as well. But this piano trio project is very lovely for us. It's a chance to get together, make music together. We really, really love and trust each other. And it's such a wonderful, special repertoire.
Yes, lots of composition, too, on your side of things, I see.
Yes, indeed.
How do you think that each of your backgrounds, those different backgrounds, how do you make those perspectives come together?
It's pretty great because we all do different varieties of things, but I think our musical values are quite shared despite us having different experiences on the surface. Also, I have to say, as we've worked together, we're coming up on like a decade now, over a decade even. A lot of what we've done, I think we've all been influenced by each other at this point. So we all love the tradition. We all come from a pretty robust classical education. I'm a composer. Jay plays tons of new music, especially as part of the Jack Quartet. Stefan does a lot of incredible performance of standard repertoire. But we all sort of mix we have our feet in different pools. I don't know. I'm mixing my metaphors.
That's okay.
Regardless, I think that we bring just a sort of a love for the tradition as well as a desire to have it feel real in our lives and real to our lives and our time. And we're always hoping to find angles on the repertoire and on the music that feel organic and fresh and surprising to us. And I think At first, this trio project was exciting to us as an opportunity to really dig into like meat and potatoes repertoire, which is definitely represented on this program. But also very quickly, it became about finding new angles on such repertoire and finding new works that do interesting things on a program.
Yeah, so tell us just a little bit briefly what the program is. So, how are we seeing these contrasts?
Absolutely. So our program, I'm very excited about this program. This tour is the first time we're doing it. We each of the two halves begin with selections or half of John Cage's Six Melodies, which was originally a piece written for violin and piano. Jay has arranged it for the trio. And then on the first half after the Cage, we have music by Beethoven, one of the most familiar piano trios in the repertoire, the Ghost Trio by Beethoven, a piece that all of us played in music school. But inside of that, we are also placing a work by John Zorn called Ghosts, which was composed, I think, in 2015. And it was the first Zorn work that we as a trio ever played. And it takes as its first few notes, and I think as also mood inspiration, the second movement of the Ghost Trio, the Ghost movement of the Ghost Trio. And so already in that first half, we have Cage, Beethoven, Beethoven, Zorn, Beethoven, which is very us, I think, at this point. And the second half of the program, after some more Cage, we've got Schubert's classic B flat piano trio.
That's a lot of contrast. I mean, just to give listeners an idea here, there's a piece that uses 90s club music, basically, or electronic effects that sometimes you guys have played. So, how do you draw the connections then between some of the things like experimental music that John Zorn might be writing, which, just to say, experimental, this goes back to like the 1990s. So, some of this is already getting to be over a quarter of a century years old here. But how do you make the through line there from Beethoven to Zorn?
Honestly, Beethoven and Zorn make a lot of sense to me together, even though like Zorn is a very, very specific kind of composer. He's all about, even within his own works, he's all about rapid contrast. And I would say like one of the easiest ways to describe it is like all about hard cuts. So in that sense, it's very different from Beethoven, which is kind of about like this almost like inexorable, intense continuity. And like even if the forms are very multifaceted, there is this really strong sense of continuity throughout, whereas Zorn is all about kind of expression through like disjunct. But the spirit of both composers, this kind of like renegade spirit, this kind of love for intensity, a sort of interest in the emotionally intense and sometimes the eerie, it actually makes a lot of sense to me. These are both kind of like revolutionarily minded composers with a little bit of a tendency for what's the word? Surprise, maybe a tiny bit of a prankster somewhere in there too. So it that really makes sense. And of course, in this case, Zorn is explicitly riffing off of the Beethoven anyhow. So it feels like a nice opportunity to share that. In this context, I feel like Zorn's work is an extension of the extremely beautiful and eerie textures of the Beethoven second movement. Elsewhere on this program, The Cage, for example, I mean, I this Cage work is not super well known, but it's very beautiful and very elegant. It's very, very precise and mysterious, but also very welcoming and melodic. I mean, the piece is called Six Melodies, but it's almost as though Cage uses these very pretty sounding materials, very simple on the surface, and then he sort of rearranges them. When I think about the piece, it almost registers as a piece of visual art where these different melodic elements are maybe physical objects, and he's just sort of moving them around on like a platform or something like that. And in a funny way, that makes me think about the Schubert, because Schubert has also this kind of almost extreme simplicity in how the music is constructed, but somehow in that like radical straightforwardness and sometimes like almost like a skeletal quality to how the music is organized, there is all of this mysterious expression that can emerge, and that's very exciting. I'm very excited to feel how all of this music sounds together.
At the risk of running this interview just slightly long, Conrad, I have one last question for you. I know that Lincoln Friends of Chamber Music has been presenting concerts in Lincoln for over 50 years now. And there's some people in that audience who have been going for all of those 50 years almost, I think. And then often there will be people in that audience who are brand new to a chamber music concert. And many listeners I know come with these expectations about what classical chamber music should sound like. In the briefest of terms, how do you engage with those expectations without being constrained by them?
My general approach, my general philosophy, as obnoxious as it sounds to say that out loud, is that at the end of the day, classical music and especially chamber music is a process. It's a social thing. It is an action. It is something that you do. In fact, overall, I would say I am interested in thinking about music as something that you do. And so I feel like at the end of the day, what really you're coming to this concert and experiencing is the three of us interacting with one another. You're hearing us listen to one another. And all of the music on this program is sort of exploring like how many different ways can you organize the social situation of chamber music? How can you organize the relationships between people? And then beyond that, the relationships between musical objects and sounds. So for people who think they already know what classical chamber music sounds like, our concert may have some sounds that are unfamiliar to them. And I hope that people are excited by that prospect. And for people who maybe have never come to a classical chamber music concert, that's the best audience ever. We love those audiences. And I think that, all what you're coming to see is three people having a conversation.
Conrad Tao. He is pianist and composer and is performing with the acclaimed Junction Trio on Thursday, February 19th at 7:30 p.m. That's at the Johnny Carson Theater, which is part of the Lead Center for Performing Arts in Lincoln. That is also part of the Lincoln Friends of Chamber Music series. Conrad, thank you so much for coming on the show, and good luck with the gig. Have fun.
Thank you, Genevieve.
As always, there will be links to more information right there on our Friday Live page. Check that out at nebraskapublicmedia.org. You've been listening to the Friday Live Extra. Don't forget to check out a full Friday Live show, too, by subscribing to the Friday Live podcast. Listen online at nebraskapublicmedia.org/Friday Live, or tune in at 10 a.m. Central every Friday for the broadcast on Nebraska Public Media.